Welcome to the Bare Essentials Podcast, where the talk is real and hibernating on your goals is not an option.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. I'm extremely honored to have today's guest. He is a former British Royal Marine Commando. He was the UK's first triple amputee since World War II. He's an Invictus Games gold medal winner, author of the best-selling book, Man Down, and a motivational speaker. Please join me in welcoming Mark Ormrod to the show. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I am fantastic, mate. How are you?
Very good, very good. I love the energy already, Mark. Gets me going. So
well, it's 10 a.m. here, so I've had a little bit of time to warm up.
Nice. Mark, could you actually just introduce yourself briefly to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mark Ormrod, as you've just said. I am from the UK, and I'm a former Royal Marines commando. I joined the military straight out of school when I applied when I was 16, joined when I was 17, and in my mind had a 20 plus year career ahead of me, where I was going to go out, see the world, hopefully do some good things, make the world a better place, grow and develop and evolve exponentially as a human being because of all the challenges that the career I went into would have presented to me. But things didn't go exactly to plan, as often is the case in anybody's life. So, you mentioned a few things in your introduction, but as to where I am now, I'm sure we'll go into that in a minute, but it's a long old story, lots of different turns in the road, but it's been exciting and it's fun and it's fulfilling, and I'm grateful for it all.
Mark, that's amazing to me is that, I'm 50 years old now, and you actually, the military at that young of an age, was that always the plan for you, even that young, to go into the military?
No, it wasn't. So what happened with me, where I grew up, all of my friends that I grew up with that lived in my area were 2, maybe 3 years older than I was. So going through school, they were always a step ahead. So as I was coming up towards the end of my compulsory education, when I was about 15 and a half, and I had my exams on the horizon, a lot of my friends had already joined the military. So I had friends in the army that are serving out in Germany in the tank regiment. I had 2 or 3 guys who were Royal Marines, a couple in the Navy, 1 or 2 in the Air Force. So as I was getting to that stage in my life where I had to make a decision about what I wanted to do, did I want to go to college, to university, and further my academic education, or did I want to jump ship and get into the real world and start a career at a young age? And because of the influence that those guys had on me, and when they would come home on leave, summer leave, Christmas leave, and all this stuff, and they always seemed to have money. They were always telling me stories about the weapons they got to play with and the crazy fitness tests that they had to do and the traveling they were doing. And it really had an influence on me. And that kind of steered me in that direction. I came to that crossroads at about 15 and a half and didn't really know what it was I wanted to do, and because of those guys around me, I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to join the military. And actually, initially, I got the paperwork to join the army because I didn't really know much about the military. I live in a city in the UK called Plymouth, down on the southwest coast, and we have a huge naval base, a big Royal Marine footprint, an army footprint. We don't have Air Force, but we've got every other branch of the military you can think of in the city, and the Royal Marines headquarters are here. But I never even knew who the Royal Marines were. I just thought if you wanted to join the military and be a soldier and wear a uniform, that you joined the army. So I went and spoke to the recruiters down there and got the paperwork. Because of my age, I had to get it signed by my parents. I got the paperwork to join the army. And it wasn't until I took that paperwork home, my dad actually told me I had an uncle who was a former Royal Marine, and he had joined as a Marine, which is our equivalent of private, and he had climbed the ranks to over 22 years to become a captain, and had now retired. So we went to see him that same week. We drove up there, and he lived 25 minutes away from my house. And he sat me down and he talked to me about his career in the Royal Marines. And he told me why they were different to the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. He told me, first of all, he pulled no punches in telling me how difficult it was to actually pass the training initially. And then he told me about the kind of career that I could expect to have if I was successful. So I went back home after that conversation. And then the Monday morning, I went back to the career center. This time I spoke to the Royal Marines recruiter, and he put in the VHS cassette into the TV video combi thing. And my jaw must have hit the floor, because I was like, who the hell are these guys? This is like, I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, big fan of Stallone and Schwarzenegger. What I was watching in this recruiting video was like what you saw in Rambo or Commando. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to become a part of this group. And got the paperwork from the Royal Marines recruiter, took it home, filled it out, sent it off, went back to school, finished my exams, did okay actually. I got 9 A to C's and 1 D in my exams, so I could have easily gone on to college and then to university. But after seeing that video, my mind was made up. Every part of my body instinctively told me that's what I was born to do. I get goosebumps now just thinking about sitting in that office and watching that video. And that was it. No one was changing my mind. As soon as I saw that, sent that paperwork off, that was the only focus I had in my life, was to join that band of brothers and to do everything that it took within my power to pass that training and earn a Green Beret.
And Mark, over here, obviously, there's separation and differences between the branches of the military. And it sounds like what you just described to me is definitely harder than if you would have just went into, say, the regular Army. So was it a lot more difficult? And is that what, obviously, being a child of the 80s, I was born in the 70s, so all those 80s movies you just talked about, my mind was going back to them like, yeah, I'm into that. Yeah, I love those movies also. So as far as the training, things like that, would it be higher level, harder training than what may have been expected in, say, the normal Army?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the longest and hardest regular forces training in the world. So where you kind of sit hierarchically is, you've got like the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and then you have special forces. So we've got the Special Boat Service, the Special Air Service. We sit just beneath them. And we have actually a disproportionate number, because the Royal Marines at full strength are only about 6,500. We have a disproportionate number of men that from the Royal Marines filter into the Special Forces, because it's that high level of training. So yeah, and when I did it, it was 30 weeks long. It then changed to 32 weeks around about the time Afghanistan and Iraq happened, because they had to do 2 weeks more intense training on different weapon systems. Then they changed it again, and it became something like 38 weeks at one point to try and reduce the number of injuries that were happening and spread it out. And now I believe it's gone back to something like 32. So even at 32 weeks, if you join on day one and get all the way to the end in one go, like I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. When you factor in Christmas leave, summer leave, Easter leave, you're looking at the best part of a year. If you do it all in one hit, pass every test, don't get any injuries. So it's a long slog just to get through it.
So you make it through the training, obviously. You're then deployed over to Afghanistan. Was that your first deployment?
No. So I joined the Royal Marines in February 2001, and my training finished in October 2001. So towards the end of my training, when we were all getting ready, you put your dress uniform on, you do the marching, the drill and the parade stuff, getting ready for the big ceremony where you presented your Green Beret in front of your families. Around about that time of my training, when all the hard work was done, September 11th happened. So I was 18 years old, stood in the diner on camp, and it came on the TV. And, when you're 18, you're a bit of an idiot, especially if you're about to be given a green beret, you think you're unstoppable and bulletproof. And, I remember we saw this and we were all like cheering, like, yes, let's go take out the bad guys, just because you don't know what else to do, right? And you've been trained to do this job. So very shortly after, so October 2001, I finished my training. January 2002, I was trained to go to Afghanistan on Operation Chicana. I never ended up going on that. They scaled it back quite a lot from our side in the UK, which was very disappointing because, like I said, you're gung-ho and you want to go out there and see if you can do what you're trained to do. But the year after, early 2003, I was trained to go out to Iraq, and I deployed on Operation Telic 1 at the start of 2003. So that was my first operational deployment. I think I turned 19 at that point. So Iraq Operation Telic 1 was the first time.
And Mark, I think from some of the things I've read and seen with you, I think I saw something where you said, for the most part, your deployment was, I don't want to use the word mundane, but you really weren't seeing a lot of action, and kind of what you just said, you were, I trained to see action. I wanted to see action. Is that accurate?
Yeah. For me, I came back from Iraq and I don't know if disappointed is the right word, a little bit deflated, because I did, you do all this hard training. You are constantly told that you're the best at this, the best at that, could do anything, go anywhere, with the first in, last out, and all this kind of stuff. So I deployed to Iraq expecting to be running around with a bayonet in my teeth, crawling through the mud, dodging bullets. And I didn't fire a single round for the whole time I was there. And I even took myself away and got attached to a big army field hospital as force protection for the ambulances, thinking, well, you're going to see something here. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be protecting medics and trying to save lives. You're bound to see some action in that kind of role, but nothing. And yeah, I came back a little bit like, well, is that it? I've been trained to do this job at the highest level and I haven't done it. I was a little bit disappointed with where I was in my career at the time.
So eventually you do get deployed to Afghanistan, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And was that, for the most part, pretty much the same thing? Really not seeing a lot of action?
Oh, no. No. If you had a spectrum and Iraq was like 1 on the spectrum, this is like a 12 out of 10. Like the minute we hit the ground, initially we flew into Camp Bastion, which was a very safe environment out in Afghanistan, big airfield, lots of protection, middle of a big flat open area, so easy to see people sneaking up. But we spent like 4 days there acclimatizing, getting our bodies used to the climate, getting our kit and equipment prepped, running some training serials. And then I got put on a Chinook and flown out to Helmand province to a place called Forward Operating Base Robinson. And that was what I expected a war zone and a conflict to be like. From the minute you hit the ground, guns, rockets, mortars, bombs, all sorts of stuff at all hours of the day and night, at any given time, just crazy and kinetic and chaotic the whole time.
So once that happens and you're in that war zone now that you've trained for, in your mind, was it, were you, I don't want to say satisfied, but were you know what I mean? Were you satisfied at that point? Was like, okay, this is what I've trained to do. And you wanted to be within that chaos. Is that about right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember feeling very amped up, and at the same time, like calm, like I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I feel comfortable here. Don't get me wrong, it was crazy and scary, and all that stuff. But I just felt centered, like I'm supposed to be here. This is the job I'm supposed to be doing, and went out and did it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, so I guess that's where all the training, it does kick in. It's the calm under fire, so to speak, and you guys do what needs to be done, which obviously goes without saying, but for me, my family was military. I didn't serve personally, but I hold you, all you men and women, in such high regard. It amazes me what you all do, and I'm so thankful for people like you. And so I definitely want
Thank
to
you.
say that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Um, so now being there, obviously, I want to talk about I believe you were out on some type of patrol. I wanted to know, could you talk to the audience about what actually the incident that actually, you know, caused you to become a triple amputee?
hmm So in the kind of before that, in the 3 months that we've been operating in Helmand, obviously part of our job is patrolling out into the local area. We'd be given a task or an objective, like disturb an enemy position, confiscate a weapons cache, go investigate this, etc. And you'd be out for numerous hours. You'd walk for miles, come back and be exhausted, and then get ready to do it all again, the next day. The patrol that I went out on when I was injured, ironically, was the easiest thing that you could ever ask an infantry soldier to do. We had been confined to Fob Robinson for a couple of days due to lack of manpower. A Chinook came in, we got a couple of extra bodies, put them in the sangers, got a few men together, went up to the headquarters compound, and were given a brief on this next foot patrol. Now, because we've been confined to the camp for a couple of days, we just wanted to ease back into it. So the idea was that we would get into 2 sections with 8 men in each section and form up at the rear entrance of the camp. Then we'd leave, and one section would go north, one section would go south. We got told to patrol the immediate perimeter of the camp, not pushing any more than 300 meters out. Then we would meet at the front entrance of the camp, close things down, finish up for the day, and go back in, where we had a bunch of mail and cards and stuff, because it was Christmas, that we could enjoy opening, and then spend the next day trying to celebrate Christmas. So very basic, low-level kind of stuff. We had not received any intelligence to give us any cause for concern. We all just went out there and were just excited to get out, stretch our legs, and get back into a routine. So the time came, and they opened up the rear entrance of the camp. I was second in command of the section, went north, the other guys went south. We went out and patrolled the immediate perimeter of the camp as we were ordered. And about 5-6 hours into it, both sections now found themselves at the other side of camp, so at the front entrance, ready to close things down, secure the location, and finish up for the day. Now, the section that I was in were positioned on a piece of high ground, what we called the North Fort. Slightly beneath us, if you look down, you could see like a bird's eye view almost of the FOB, the Forward Operating Base Robinson. And then beneath that, just off the side of the main dirt road that ran through the area, was the other section of men that we left with earlier in the day. So being on this high feature, we were in a very advantageous position tactically. So we were given the task of giving the other section overwatch while they peeled back in the camp, got behind the perimeter wall where they were safe. Then they could return the favor. We could come off the high feature, get back in. Again, standard operating procedure, thing that we've done a million times before. So we're on the high feature, and the guy in charge, the section commander, Corporal Sean Helsby, starts taking his half of the section and giving them fire positions. I then take my half of the section, and about 4 meters to my front, there was a shallow bowl on the ground. Now, normally, if you're out on a foot patrol and you go firm and you stop for any period of time, you want to get behind a tree, a wall, a building, a rock, anything that's going to give you a bit of cover. Where we were situated, we didn't have any of those luxuries. So I thought if we get in this little bowl, we get down on our bellies, that's going to give us the best kind of protection that we could get given the environment that we're operating in. So I thought at the time it was the best option for us. So I jumped in the bowl, my half of the section started taking their fire positions. I stood back. There were a couple of checks I had to do, made sure that we were tight defensively in case there was a small arms attack. And when the lads gave me the thumbs up that they were happy with their fire positions, I started slowly walking over towards the position that I selected for myself. Now, as I got there and went to get down onto my stomach, I put my right knee on the floor, and that was the moment that I knelt on and detonated an improvised explosive device.
So,
Yep.
so Mark, when that happens and that goes off, I mean, just for the audience, do you do you are you just totally unconscious, or are you still aware of what is going on around you at the time?
I was fully aware, fully conscious throughout the whole thing. And so here's the thing, right? When I triggered the IED, because of the ground, it's very sandy, very dusty. This huge dust cloud's created, so you can't see anything temporarily. There's no pain. Your brain kicks into fight or flight. A huge adrenaline dump occurs, because you think, I thought we were under attack, right? So I'm getting ready to get into a firefight. I can't see anything, so I'm kind of panicking. I'm adrenaline fueled. I'm getting ready to get into it. So I had no clue what I had done. And I could hear everyone around me shouting, trying to figure out what was going on, but just assumed we were under attack. So I was getting ready to get into a fire position to ID where the enemy came from and start laying down fire, and then figure things out as I could see what was going on. And it wasn't until the dust cloud settled and I looked down to where my legs should have been that I realized what I had done. And I understood that we weren't under attack, that I had set off an IED. And it is a very surreal experience. Your body's incredible how it can deal with this kind of stuff. Like I said, there's a huge adrenaline dump to start with. All these chemicals are released. The body's natural pain relief mechanisms all kick in and engage. And your brain, I think, struggles to process what it is that you're actually looking at. So I remember sitting there, legs completely shredded and ripped off, blood and fluid pouring out of my thighs. I'm covered in sand and dust. I didn't know that my arm had been injured at that point, but just kind of looking there, like in no pain, thinking, what am I looking at? And it not making any sense. And then me thinking, well, if this is real, why am I not in pain? And it's very, very surreal, like a dream. And I snapped out of that very quickly, because then I started thinking about, like 2, maybe 3 seconds tops, I started thinking about my team and the rest of the lads. So I looked around, just praying that they were all okay and no one had been hurt or killed. And as I looked over my right shoulder, I saw Sean, Corporal Helsby, the section commander. And I'm struggling to understand what's going on at this point and what I'm dealing with and whether it's even real. And I look at his face and he's got no color in it. His eyes were huge, like he's in shock, which kind of said to me, this is real, Mark. You need to kind of figure this out and deal with it. And so I went to look back at my legs. And as I got to like the 3 o'clock position, as my eyes were sweeping the floor, that's when I saw my arm lying in the floor. And I kind of picked my hand up, which was actually still in relatively good nick. It wasn't too damaged. The whole bicep down to the wrist was completely smashed. The bone was gone. And I picked it up in this kind of surreal state, looked at my hand, and then dropped it in the sand and just let out this massive scream as I realized, what was actually happening now. I understood we weren't under attack. I've stood in an IED. I've looked at Sean's face. He's confirmed to me that this is real. This isn't a dream. This is happening. Your legs are gone. Your arm's gone. You're bleeding out. I was now in a crater. We were working with some American Special Forces guys, and they had the job of clearing the area afterwards, and they wrote a report on it. Their report said this crater was now 12 feet deep by 15 feet around, and there were 6 other devices around me. So I knew that an evacuation was going to be extremely difficult. And to add to that, the way we're trained is that we don't go rushing in to help a casualty like that in case you set up other devices which could either further injure or kill me or injure or kill the guy running in. So I'm sat there in my head thinking, I'm in a 12-foot crater surrounded by devices. The lads are not going to run in and help me because we're trained not to. I'm bleeding out of 3 limbs in my body. I'm going to die. But the strange thing is, in the back of my mind, I never thought I was. I knew in my gut that I was going to be okay. And I put that down to knowing that I was on the ground operating with some extremely well-trained, professional and brave people, and they would do whatever it took to get me out of there. And that's exactly what they did. Like a well-oiled machine, they did everything perfectly. And they got me out of there. I was probably, I'm being generous if I say minutes away from dying. And if they'd have acted slower, then I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. But I knew that they were going to get me out of that, and they did it perfectly and got me out pretty quickly. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm here now to tell the story.
It's amazing to think about, just not just for you, but your team and the other men, and just to think about, with all that chaos going on, even your calmness, and then the calmness and professionalism that they all showed to be able to get you out of there. I know when I had heard the story and looked into it more, the part that you just told that I wasn't aware of was that you were still surrounded by additional IEDs. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible that they're able to get you out of there. Now, Mark, I know, so they get you to the helicopter, you're airlifted, and there was a point though on that helicopter, am I right, that they did pronounce you actually, they pronounced you dead, did they not?
Yeah. So there were two of us injured in the blast. I lost both my legs and my right arm, and another guy, Milky, had shrapnel up his back and his tricep of one of his arms. So the way you prioritize casualties in that situation is, if you have a guy that's dead and a guy that's dying, as harsh as it sounds, you don't focus your attention on the guy that's dead to bring him back to life. You focus all your attention on the guy that's dying, because you don't want two dead bodies. So when they put me in the back of the Chinook, they felt me for a pulse, and they said that I didn't have one. They couldn't get any fluids into my veins because they'd all collapsed because of the massive blood loss. And when they put an oxygen mask on me, it should have steamed up to show that I was breathing, but it didn't. So they put me in a corner and said, this guy's dead. Let's get to work on the other guy. Now, as one of the medics walked past me to get some equipment to go back and work on Milky, he said that my eyes started to flutter, which meant that my heart was beating. So he then alerted some of the other medics. They rushed over and started to get to work on me. And 3 days before this had happened, whoever's in charge of the Army medical world had cleared a technique to be used where, if you can't get intravenous lines into somebody's veins, then you can take a medical drill and you can drill into their tibia and fibia and insert it through the bone. Problem being, I didn't have any tibias or fibias because they'd been ripped off by the IED. So these medics, again, extremely professional, extremely brave, made the decision to drill into my hip bone. And this had never been done ever, like not even in theory, I don't think. And no one had any idea if it would work. The first time it didn't. I don't think they pulled my skin tight enough to get the needle to bite into my hip bone. So they reset, they tried again, they pulled the skin tight, put the needle in, and it bit this time. They started getting fluids into me, and they said within 3 minutes, I was awake and responsive and coherently answering the questions that they were asking me. So they literally, through pure skill and professionalism and courage and very quick decision making, were able to bring me back from the dead.
Wow. It just, It's amazing to just, when I thinking about all of it, obviously you're the focal point of it all, what happened, but again, just everything, the way it happened, it just amazes me. And it's, I'm thankful obviously that you are here to tell this story, because and we'll get into it a little more, but I think some of the things you're doing now, and because of what happened to you, you're going to really be changing a lot of people's lives. So Mark, you're in the helicopter, you get to the hospital. I'm assuming, from what I know and medically, when you're in the hospital, I'm assuming they're probably trying to control your consciousness to a point where I would think they don't want you to just, they probably have you in somewhat of an induced coma at some point, I would assume. And my guess is they wouldn't want you to just wake up and be totally conscious aware, as worrying that shock in itself could be damaging to you. So did they kind of gradually like wean you in and out of consciousness to try to allow you to process what had happened so it didn't hit you again?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was their plan, or if there was a lot of luck involved, but that's exactly what happened. When I got back to the UK on Christmas morning, about 4 a.m., I spent 3 days in a drug-induced coma, and then I did a total of, I think, 7 days in intensive care. So for the next 4 days, they were gradually bringing me in and out of consciousness bit by bit, so that I could, I think, bit by bit understand what it was that had happened. And, I remember the first day, you hallucinate a lot because of the huge amount of drugs you're on. But I remember the first day, the first memory, thinking I just lost my feet and some fingers. And then the next day I realized it was actually both of my legs that were above the knee. Then I think on the last day or the day before I was leaving intensive care, I pulled my arm out from under the quilt, the sheet on the bed, and I started to kind of giggle a little bit. And the nurse looked at me and she said, "What's so funny?" I said, "Oh, I'm hallucinating, these drugs. And now it looks like my right arm's falling off." And she just looked at me as if to say, "How do I tell him that it has?" Because I thought I just missed some fingers. And the crazy thing is, if I had like an itch on my chest, the whole time I was in intensive care, I was scratching it with my right arm because I was right-handed and I was relieving that itch. But I didn't even have a right arm. And the way she looked at me, I didn't need to ask her. She didn't need to tell me. I was like, okay, right, I get it now. So both legs above the knee, right arm above the elbow. Now I know. And for me personally, it was the way that it happened was perfect. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't imagine waking up in cold turkey, being like, right, both your legs above the knee, right arm above the elbow, deal with it. It was almost like just bit by bit, day by day, I was like, okay, I'm getting it now. Right, this is where we are. Let's move forward. So I definitely didn't accept it at that point, but I understood it.
So, Mark, I can't even imagine the thoughts that are going through your head as you're processing that information. I'm sure it's a range of emotions, and I mean, right at that point, as you realize everything, are you kind of thinking, "Damn, this is it for me," or are you at that point? Do you have resolve? Are you determined to say like, "No, I'm not. This isn't it. I'm not going to accept it"? I mean, how do you process that, and what are your emotions like?
So at that early stage, I was exhausted all the time from fighting infections, from the medications. So you don't really get a huge amount of time to think that way. It was also because of the morphine, you just don't really care about much when you're taking that stuff. Everything seems great. It wasn't really until I left intensive care after that first week, I went upstairs to the burns and plastics ward, and they further started reducing me off the medication, that you start looking at it and, processing it, thinking about things, and, with nothing to do but lay in a bed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have a lot of time to think. And in the first couple of weeks, it was rough, because I'd gone from being 24 years old, 6'2", 16 stone in weight, physically, probably the fittest I've ever been in my life, and being a Royal Marines commando, to now being, I think I was just under 9 stone in weight, 4 foot tall, without prosthetics on. I've lost my dominant arm. I only had 2 fingers to use. You see that big scar on my hand where the shrapnel tore my palm open. So I could only use these 2 fingers. Couldn't eat for myself, going from being what I would say was above a fully independent male because of my job role to now being like a baby, and that was really difficult for me to deal with in the beginning. And to make it worse, 3.5 weeks into my recovery, the amputation specialist with over 30 years experience came into my room and said, because I'm missing my limbs above the knees, that I had no chance of ever being able to walk using prosthetics, because he'd never met anybody with just one leg missing above the knee that had any success using prosthetics, so that hit me really hard. And, a lot of people always ask me this, I'm always very honest, that was the first time that I'd contemplated suicide. There were only 2 times, and they were both within that first 6-week period. That was the first time when he said, you're in a wheelchair for life and you need carers, and everything's gone, your career, your life, everything. That hit me hard. And again, I had nothing to do but lay in a bed and think about what he'd said since he said it. But I eventually got over that after I was visited by a man wearing 2 prosthetic legs above the knee, a guy who was blown up in Iraq in 2005. And because I had physically seen with my own eyes somebody similar with similar injuries to me walking, then I knew that it was a possibility. And that's when my mindset changed. And I was like, okay, well, if this guy can do it, there's not any reason why I can't do it too. So we shifted mindset then, and it was just full steam ahead from that minute onwards.
And that's amazing. Obviously, on my podcast, I talk a lot about mindset. You're definitely the first guest I've had on that I think where mindset, we're really talking about mindset to the degree we are, because I can't imagine how much your mindset has to shift to be able to deal with what you were dealing with. And Mark, I think also I read somewhere, or I heard you say it somewhere, where you actually start to do your own research, and you come across someone here in the States, I believe, Cam, was that his name?
Cameron.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that story also is amazing to me.
That's exactly what happened. The minute that guy left my hospital room, I got a laptop brought in there, got hooked up to the internet, and started doing my own research. Because I was missing my arm as well. The guy that visited me had both his arms, and it makes a huge difference, as you can imagine. So I needed to find somebody that had the same injuries that I had, that was out there living the way that at that early stage of my recovery, I envisioned myself wanting to live. And it definitely wasn't in a wheelchair. And I quite quickly came across Cameron. He was, how old was Cameron? Maybe 22 at the time. But he had been hit by a train in 2002 when he was 15 and lost both his legs above the knee, and his right arm actually slightly higher than mine, almost to his shoulder. And the things that this guy was doing were incredible. Like I had just been told, you'll never walk again. You're going to be in a wheelchair the rest of your life. And then I see this guy surfing, swimming, running, driving, using prosthetics, not using a wheelchair, all different kinds of prosthetics, swimming legs, running legs, walking legs, short legs for the gym. And it just blew my mind. And I was like, this is what I want to be doing. You know what I mean? I want to do what this guy's doing, if it's possible. And, if the tools and the resources are out there, then that's what I'm going to do. And again, because I saw physically somebody out there in a similar situation doing these incredible things, I knew that if I approached it the right way, then I'd be able to do something similar too.
So, and I think right off the bat, it was kind of a test of your mindset, because did they not say that they would work with you, but didn't they tell you they wanted you to come over by yourself and leave your wheelchair home?
Yeah, that was the caveat. I reached out to Cameron and his team, and they initially started helping me via email. Right, they're like, right, try this, try that. This is going to help with this. This will help with that. And then they eventually invited me out. the 9th of June 2009 was the day that I flew out. And it was like the day or 2 days before I was due to fly that they dropped that bombshell and said, look, Cameron's flying in tomorrow. We're excited that you're going to come. By the way, you have to leave your wheelchair at home and you can't bring any carers with you. Now, at that early stage of my recovery, that seemed like an impossibility to me because it's so exhausting trying to recover from injury. You know, for a double above knee amputee, it takes 300 to 500% more energy to do anything than anybody. So I was constantly exhausted, tired, bruised, cut, battered, trying to get through the days, doing my rehab here. And now, and obviously having people around me doing everything for me. And now these guys wanted me to fly to the other side of the world without my wheelchair, without a carer. And I honestly was close to backing out because it terrified me. I thought, that's impossible. No one can do that. But I slept on it, woke up the next day, and I'm like, you know what? Stuff it. I'm going to give it a shot. And it's going to be rough and it's going to hurt. But, you know, I've been through Royal Marines training when I was 17. I've been in situations where it's rough and where it hurts. And I know I can get through that. So I hopped on a plane. Like I said, 9th of June 2009, I flew out there to meet Cameron and his team. And that was the last day that I ever used a wheelchair. You know, 9th of June 2009, they gave me the tools and the ability to push through my and other people's perceived limitations of what you could do as a trilateral above knee and above elbow amputee. And it changed my life. And, you know, I'd be forever grateful for that. And that's why now I try to, you know, pay it forward after what Cameron and those guys did for me, the way it changed my life. I want to try and help other people to open their minds too and see what they can do.
Mark, you're definitely doing that. I mean, I would say this. I mean, when I see the things that you're capable of doing and the resolve you've shown in your mindset, I think one thing that you do for people, obviously we talk a lot about motivation and people looking to get motivation. I've learned as I've gotten older in life that I like to look to people for motivation, but I've also been cautious because I think sometimes we can be guilty of almost outsourcing our motivation. And and it can become where you might not find it or it may not be enough, right? So, but what I think you do is you hold people accountable in a way because what you've been through and what you're capable of doing, you basically make people accountable to not have excuses. And I think that's even more important than motivation in some ways, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing you're doing. And then what I wanted to ask you is this, for what you had to go through to get to where you are now, you know, I think motivation in a way might be almost like underselling it, right? I like to ask a lot of people that I have on the show, I think we all need to have a why. What's our reason? What's that reason? What's those people? What is it that makes us willing to do anything and not give up and push through it all? So during all that, I mean, Mark, what was your why?
So my why, and what I love about it is that it's almost like a goal that's unachievable. But my why in everything I do is to become the ultimate version of myself. And you can't achieve it. That's what you have to work on to the day that you die. So the motivation is always there. And that's the big, grand, overarching goal. But like everyone, I have these times where I am unmotivated or things are getting on top of me. So at the other end of the spectrum, on the way to achieving that goal or trying to achieve it, I just always try to make at least a 1% improvement daily in anything I'm doing. And if you can do that, then that's something to celebrate and that's progress. So I'm just always trying to better myself in every area of my life by at least 1% every single day. And that keeps the motivation, you know, alive. It's like, okay, right, I don't feel like doing it today. I've set the bar quite low because all I've got to do is improve by 1%. Do you know what I mean? And if I can do that, happy days. And that kind of has an adverse effect in the way that you sit there and go, well, 1% is easy. So even I don't feel like I'm going to go for 10. And you just start it just keeps the ball rolling, if you like. So that's my why. I believe we all have that ability within us to like become the ultimate versions of ourselves. It's just, I think the day and age we live in now, everyone gets caught up in just garbage, really. Like, watching rubbish on TV, or, focusing or concentrating on things that aren't really important, and getting caught up with that kind of stuff, where human beings really are incredible. You look back in time to how we used to, we're very comfortable now. Everything's very comfortable the way we live now with technology and, creature comforts. And I think we forget that. I think we forget what we're capable of achieving, and we just enjoy the comfort a little bit too much. So I try not to. I try to live outside my comfort zone a little bit more every day.
Yeah, and that's great advice, and I talk about that a lot, even on the podcast. Is I find myself now, because of what you just said, I think we all can be guilty of just being comfortable, but also all the garbage that may surround us. I find myself now, I'm looking more to try to do things every day that suck. I want to push myself to be better and to do harder things. There was a saying I heard before, somebody said, I really love this one. It said that every day you should be shadow boxing with yourself. And if you're not, it's not a good day. And I think that is true. And Mark, it's obvious though, when I see where you're at now and what you're doing, I mean, hell, you wrote a book, and, from any author I've ever had on the show that's written a book, they tell me usually offline, I'll never do it again. I hated it. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, how was that difficult in itself to write a book?
Yes and no. So I had a ghostwriter, and I actually wrote it while I was going through rehab, because I only got one arm. In the evenings, people in like the communal rooms where the TVs were on the PlayStations and Xboxes and stuff. So I couldn't watch telly, and I couldn't get involved in, gaming or anything like that, because I only had one arm. So me and this ghostwriter spent the evenings. He would interview me, and we go backwards and forwards writing this book. But yeah, after about 10 months, I was like, oh, I'm sick of this. And when he actually put it in chronological order, I didn't bother reading it. And it wasn't until when we went into lockdown in 2020, it's the first time I read my own book from start to finish. So yeah, it was difficult. I'm actually writing a second one now. I'm just trying to get it over the line with the publishers. Most of it's been done. And again, with a ghostwriter, because that seems to be the easiest, most efficient way for me to work. I can't sit down at a laptop and start tapping away at the keyboard, because that would just drive me nuts. But I do enjoy it in the way that I get everything out of my head, get it onto paper, and then think about the amount of people that hopefully it can help, either sharing a story, sharing advice, wisdom, knowledge, whatever it is, and that as a motivator helps make the process a bit easier. You don't make it about yourself and the long hours and the repetitive reading. It's about what good can this do out there and how can it help?
I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure it's going to do a lot of good. And as far as goals, also, one of the other things I thought was amazing is I want to talk about a little bit. I mean, we talked about obviously your military service, what happened, but then the Invictus Games. I mean, I think what I saw, you've competed more than once.
Yeah.
And I know you've medaled multiple times and even gold medals, but that whole thing about being better, you didn't gold medal originally, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, no, my plan was to. My mindset back then was, I'm a Royal Marine. I'm fitter than everybody. I'm just going to turn up, destroy the competition, get my gold medals, drop the mic, and never come back. And that was a very arrogant, stupid, narrow-minded approach to have to it. And I came away the first year with 2 silvers and 2 bronzes. But my goal was to get golds. And so I still didn't plan to go back a second time, but I couldn't let it rest. And you can't see it, but just in the corner of my office, a friend of mine made me up a big frame with an Invictus flag in the middle, and with 3 slots down one side and 3 down the other. And he put the 2 silvers and 2 bronzes in, but left the 2 top slots empty. And so every day for the next year, I'd be in my garage at like 5 a.m. on the rower or the hand bike, staring at these empty slots, just like motivated to fill them with gold medals. And I went back the second year with a completely different attitude. You know, the first year humbled me a lot. And I went back the second year with a plan and a strategy and a different mindset. And it worked, because I came back with 4 gold medals that year. I think 2 bronzes and another silver. So yeah, it definitely helped to flip the mindset there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Mark, the other thing, I'm kind of into this myself. My son actually wrestled in high school and college here in the States. He's actually an MMA fighter.
Cool.
Literally last night, he just training jujitsu. I train jujitsu. Nice. What jujitsu belt are you?
Blue belt, 2 stripes.
Okay. Yeah, my son's actually same blue belt.
Okay.
Knowing what jujitsu is, that to me, even for someone fully able, right, not dealing with what you're dealing with, I know for me, even it would be like basically going there and you enjoy getting your ass kicked. How much has that helped shape you throughout all this?
It's been huge. You know, martial arts, before I was injured, I fought as an amateur kickboxer, Muay Thai, and boxing. And I trained from about 13 years old. And I really love martial arts as a whole. So the discipline, the honor, respect, integrity, as well as the competition. And I thought it was gone from my life forever after I was injured. And it wasn't until a Royal Marines physical training instructor introduced me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I didn't even know what that was back then. He explained it to me that it was a ground-based grappling system, you know, and I thought, okay, well, I'm without my legs on, I'm already on the floor, so I'm halfway there. I just got to learn how to actually fight.
Right.
And we started doing it, and it opened a whole new world to me, but also brought back a lot of stuff into my life that I thought I'd lost. And I realized that actually this particular discipline, everything was adaptable. So it didn't matter that I had 3 limbs missing, because I can use my stump, my legs. There are actually a lot of situations for me that are an advantage in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like getting out of someone's closed guard. I can just wiggle and pop, you know, and most people can't do that. I've got a lot less stuff to grab onto. They can't get their hooks into me in certain places because I don't have anything to hook onto. And it also, if you go back to what I said about wanting to become that ultimate version of myself, it also opened up a whole new world to me of areas that I was lacking in and not understanding fully. You know, things like with, you know, the way Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu works, the things that people think are small things, like how you apply pressure to somebody, how you can use your shoulders and you can use your head, things that to me I didn't ever thought I'd needed to use for anything. Once they opened up my mind to use them in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I started using them in my life as well, as an amputee. So whereas before I might walk from the car with 2 bags of shopping in one hand and then go back to the car, now I'd have 2 in one hand, put 2 on my stump or on my shoulder, and you know, and becoming more efficient in life and better in life as a result of training jiu-jitsu. So, and everyone says that, even the able-bodied people that I train with, they take so many lessons from the mats and apply them to their life. That is why I think so many people become, you know, quote unquote, addicted to it, because of just how wholesome it is in your life.
Yeah, it's definitely something that drives a lot of people. And I mean, for me, martial arts has been huge in my life and definitely helped me as I was struggling with my weight and fitness a couple years back. Mark, one thing that becomes real clear to me is it's so refreshing to see, even through what you've been through, that you just can tell you want to help other people. And I see that with your social media, even you're talking about the new book. Where does that come from the military, your upbringing, your parents, whatnot? But like it's extremely, I don't know if you realize it, but it's extremely infectious and apparent that I say this to some people, you're one of those people, you make other people want to be better. And
Okay.
it just, I mean, where's that come from? And do you realize you're even like that?
Um, I think I do, but it just from a young age for me, it's always been just a natural thing for me. You know, like when I joined the military, you know, the stupid, young, arrogant side of me was like, yeah, let's go take out bad guys. But I think the real part of me was actually let's go help people that need help and stop them, you know, stop the bad guys for that reason because you know, go fight other people's fights who can't fight for themselves. So that was kind of a driver while I was in the military. And then going through recovery, again, like when the way Cameron stepped up and his team stepped up to help me when I was in a very dark place with a million questions, suffering massively with overwhelm, having no idea what my future held for me, they literally went, yeah, we'll help you, dude. Come see us. And I'm like, these people have given up their time, their knowledge, their expertise, their wisdom, years and years and years of their hard work to help me. And I don't even know them. So, you know, I was unbelievably grateful for that. And I think when you're given a gift like that, you have to pay it forward. You have to go out and help other people.
Someone is at the front door.
Sorry, my doorbell's just gone off. And so yeah, I just wanted to go out there. I knew what people were going through when they were lying in a hospital bed and what their families were going through, the questions and the anxiety and the overwhelm and everything. I'm like, right, I think I can help. And I was always very cautious that I wasn't that guy that heard about someone in hospital and just turned up. I'm like, hi, I'm Mark Ormrod. I can help everybody, because that's not the way to do things. You know, everyone is on their own individual journey, and not everyone's ready for that at the beginning of their journey. It might come many years later on down the line. But if the phone went and somebody asked, I would always go and do what I could to help where I could, because I knew how massive a difference it made for me in my life. And I knew it could help make a massive difference in theirs too.
Yeah, Mark. Well, again, I can tell from your social media and what you're doing. I mean, you have a genuine interest in wanting to help other people, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, even for me, I mean, just what you just said. I mean, I I sent Mark a message. Mark didn't know me from anyone, this crazy older guy from the United States, and sure, when let's do it. So again, I can't thank you enough for that. Mark, I wanted to end with this. What do you, obviously, I want to get the message out there. I want people, and trying to really spread the word about people I have on this show. I want people to seek guys like you out. It's good for everyone. It's better for everyone. How can people see what you're up to, and any other thing you got coming up you like to promote here?
I think, like you said, social media. I'm on there every day. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the usual suspects. Just out there, engaging and interacting every day, trying to spread the positive message, trying to reach out to people. So that's probably the best way. And then we should have, just before I got on this call, I was editing version 5 of a movie script. We should have a movie coming out within the next year or two, based on my first book. So hopefully that's going to help a lot of people as well. So yeah, pretty easy to find. Social media is probably the best way.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the movie, Mark. That should be really interesting, and congratulations on that. Looking forward again to the next book coming out, and again, thank you for your. No, I'm not from the UK, but I thank all military for their service. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for what you're doing now. It's amazing, and um I wanted to just end totally with this last thing. Knowing where you are now and who you are, if you did have to change anything about your life, would you?
No, don't dwell on that. Never think about that. Just enjoy the moment and look to the future.
That's what I thought. Well, on that note, everyone, please seek out Mark Ormrod. Amazing individual, and you won't regret it. I follow him on Instagram, so please check him out and keep an eye out for what he has upcoming. Mark, thank you again.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening, and remember, never hibernate on your goals.